4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Don and I'm here in Melbourne talking to you about IELTS speaking. And with me is the beautiful Alba.
Hi guys.
So hi Alba, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
So what are you going to do today, Alba?
We'll be talking about speaking.
Okay, you're going to ask me some questions?
Questions, yes, that's right. And I'm also...
What are you going to do today?
And I'll be reading out the question once we receive online. So,
good.
yeah.
So it's the last Facebook session for 2016, which is a very good opportunity for us to talk about very quickly, what have you been doing this year?
It's a busy year this time for IELTS, but I'm planning to go to Gold Coast and Cairns.
Great.
And what about you?
Well, I'm going up to Queensland as well.
Wow.
I'm going to my brother's birthday. I won't tell you how old he is because that will tell you how old I am. But I'm looking forward to that.
Pretty young.
Now listen, I need to know a little bit of Hindi.
Yep, sure.
Can you teach me how to say Merry Christmas in Hindi?
Yeah, sure. You can say आपको
Christmas
और
नए साल की
शुभकामनाएं.
शुभकामनाएं.
That's right, you did a good job.
Thank you very much.
You should start learning Hindi.
Very good, I will, after I finish Arabic. Okay, let's get on to it.
Yep,
do you have any
sure.
questions for me?
Just give me a second. It's Jillian Zhang.
Yeah.
What's the best way to showcase our grammatical range without compromising its accuracy?
It's a very good question, Julian, because the examiner wants to know about your range, it's true, but they also want to know about your accuracy. And sometimes we might be tempted to use a structure that we're not very sure about in order to show the range, but we lose accuracy. Well, I would just practice a few complex structures. You don't have to have a lot. For example, you could practice if sentences. Now, this is a beautiful construction in English. If I go there, I will do something. If I had gone there, I would have done something. Two different types of if sentences. If you make sure that they are perfect, if you understand them perfectly well, you can use them very confidently and accurately. Also, practice doing other things like practice relative clauses. I am a person who likes. I come from a place that is. So if you can learn those few complex structures and feel that you can do them accurately, then that will certainly help you.
That's right to know. Yep, and the next question is, how does IELTS test my English speaking?
Well, IELTS speaking test is about 14 minutes long and it has 3 parts. And in these 3 parts, the examiner is asking you a range of questions. They're asking you to explain, they're asking you to describe, they're asking you to compare. Do you see that all of these different functions will require perhaps different grammar as well and a different vocabulary? But the first part is the easiest part, I think, in some ways, because it's talking about simple things like what you do, what you like, where you live, that sort of thing.
Okay, good.
But I haven't finished yet, Alba. I've got more to say about this. But the examiner will ask you a difficult question in part 1, and that question is why? Now that's a difficult question because sometimes they will ask you a question like, do you like where you live? And you'll say, yes, I like where I live. And they'll say, why do you like where you live? So you should practice answering that question, why and why not. In the second part, you have to do a very difficult thing. You have to speak for 2 minutes while the examiner does not speak. So you're talking and not getting very much feedback. The examiner is smiling, encouraging you, but you have to speak for 2 minutes. And this is something you should practice.
2 minutes.
Speaking for 2 minutes, if you practice that every day, then you will find that it's an easy task. And always, the subject you have to talk about is easy. It's about a place you know, a person you know, an object that you know, or an event. The third part of the test is, I think, probably the most difficult, because we have to have a discussion, and the examiner will ask you follow-up questions and ask you to explain what you mean, to justify your opinion, to give examples for what you've said, and that lasts for 5 minutes. So you need to practice discussing serious topics.
And does accent matter, or?
That's a good question. Accent is something that everybody has. You have an accent, I have an accent. It doesn't matter what your accent is as long as you are able to be understood, okay? So don't worry too much about your accent. The only problem with accent is when it stops you being understood. So if you don't make the sounds of English correctly, the a, e, I, o, and sh, and s, and t, and b, and p, then that is a problem. But your accent itself is not a problem.
Okay, that's great to know. There is another question.
Yeah.
What is the main reason Indian, especially in Kerala,
Yeah.
students can't get good score in IELTS?
Well, I know some people from Kerala, and they speak Malayalam, which is one of the longest palindromes in the world, by the way. And they have no problem with mastering English. I really don't know. That's a technical question. There may be some sounds in Malayalam which are very different to English. There may be some English sounds that are not in the Malayalam language. I don't know. Do you know?
No.
You don't come from the south?
No, I don't.
Okay. So I'm very sorry. I really can't answer that question. But why don't you talk to your friends from Kerala, talk to them and with a piece of paper and write down, okay, what are some of the pronunciation features of English which we find hard, and then say, okay, let's master these over a period of weeks. We'll practice them and we will improve our speaking performance.
That's good to know. And Noor says hi, and from
Hi,
Pakistan.
Noor.
And
Noor in Arabic means light. Did you know that?
No. There is another question from the same person,
Yeah.
Julian. How do makers differentiate the appropriate use of pauses
Okay.
from unnatural hesitations?
Well, it's very easy to distinguish these things, really. I paused just then, right? That was a natural pause. But what if I pause there? Well, that's unnatural. I paused in the middle of a chunk of English. And you should start to think about chunks in English, because in English there are identifiable bits of language which go together and which you can't break up. If I give you a sentence, a simple sentence, I can talk about what I did last night. I did lots of things last night. For instance, I did this and then I did that. I paused before the for instance. There was a natural break there.
Right.
But there would not be a break between the for and the instance. So when you listen, when you practice your listening, this is an opportunity for you to practice your speaking. When you go on the internet and listen to a podcast, for example, listen to it very carefully and try and get this transcript as well. Print the transcript out and use your pen to mark where are the natural pauses. And then practice that. Imagine that you are going to perform in a film or a play, because the speaking test is a performance. So rehearse it, work out exactly where the pauses come and where the emphasis comes, and that will improve your speaking.
Do you think it's a good idea to stand in the front of mirror and speak?
I agree. I think that's a very good idea. And lock the bathroom door before you do it, so that you feel very comfortable doing it.
That's right. There's another question from Shalini.
Yep.
How can we improve writing in task 2 from band 6 at least 7?
Yes. Well, going from a 6 to 7 is difficult. People who learn languages know that we can make a lot of progress early, and then we get quite good, but our progress seems to slow down. And we get to a period which we call a plateau, where it seems to go flat. And that's around the band 6 level, because the band 6 is competent. You can do lots of things. You've learned a lot of language already. But to go to the 7, you need to use language much more naturally and much more accurately. So these are the things that differentiate a 6 and a 7. So specifically, a 7, there are 4 criteria in speaking. The first criterion is fluency. So a band 7 can speak without much effort. Now that's one thing that makes that shows the examiner that you are a band 7 for fluency. The second criterion is lexical resource, vocabulary. And the thing that marks you as a 7 there is that you can use very natural English words, collocations, words that go together, simple words but used appropriately. The third criterion is grammatical range and accuracy, and the thing that marks out a band 7 there is you don't make many mistakes. So your tenses are okay, you don't mix up past and present tenses, your use of prepositions is okay, you don't mix up in, on, with or by. All of those things show you that you are a band 7. And the last criterion is pronunciation. And this is a really important one. If you listen to my voice, you can hear my voice going up and down to give you some extra meaning. I will say that this thing is important, but that thing is not important. And this and that are pronounced in a different way. They have different emphasis. Now, a band 7 or a band 8 or 9 is a person who is able to use these features, these pronunciation features. They don't just speak like that all the time. They put some colour into their voice. So that's how you go from a 6 to a 7 for speaking. And writing is a little bit the same, because the grammar and the vocabulary is exactly the same as for speaking. But with the writing, you also have to be careful about answering the question fully. So if you answer the question fully in task 1 and task 2, then that will be a 7 or better. And if you use the second criterion in writing is coherence and cohesion. If you use paragraphs correctly, enough paragraphs, if you use connecting words correctly, then all of that will make you a band 7. Okay.
There's another question from Kishore.
Yeah.
Can we use simple words in writing and speaking?
Yes, you can, and you should. If you are listening to a podcast in English, if you're reading an article in English in a magazine, if you are listening to people speaking English, you will see that small words are very often used, simple words. But sometimes this is misleading, because sometimes those small words are used in what we call phrasal verbs. We use small words, but we add an adverb or a preposition that makes them have a slightly different meaning. Now, this ability to use these sorts of simple, seemingly simple words is something that really will improve your score in IELTS. It's simply a matter, can I use English words naturally? So using big, long words is good, but use them correctly. Using shorter words is good, but make sure you use them correctly too.
There's another question from Sal Akhtar.
Yeah.
How can I improve speaking, and what are the practices or activities we can do
To do
improve?
that.
Yeah.
Okay, Sal. Well, to improve speaking, I would do two things, maybe three. Practice your speaking a lot. Make sure that you take every opportunity to speak. And when you speak, make sure that you are getting some feedback as well. So when you speak not just to people who speak your language, but speak to native speakers, and you can find them everywhere. When you go to the shops, when you go to the library, when you're at work, when you're studying, don't be afraid to do that. And don't be afraid to say, was that correct English? How would you say that? Can I improve that? Use a pencil, make a note of these things, and make sure you revise them. Remember, I said that there are 4 criteria for speaking, so you have to improve on each of these criteria. So the more you speak, the more fluent you'll become, the more confidently you'll be able to continue speaking. The more you speak, the more words you'll feel confident using. And you should write down these words and make sure you revise them. The more you speak, you'll also become more confident using those constructions, those sentence structures that we talked about earlier on. And with pronunciation, if you're asking for feedback from people, did I pronounce that correctly? Did you understand what I said? How do I pronounce that? Then all of these things will improve your speaking. But it's not just a matter of speaking, it's also a matter of doing everything else, like reading. If you read a lot, you're going to learn a lot of English. So don't just speak, but speak, read, practice what you've learned with writing, and listen to a lot of English as well.
Right, there is next question from Sana Ahmed.
Yeah.
Is it true that we can get more bands in listening and reading modules?
Well, you can go to the IELTS Essentials website and have a look at the data that show what the average scores are for listening, reading, writing, and speaking throughout the world. It's based on nearly 3 million candidates every year. So this data is very good data. And it will show you that listening and reading generally do get a higher score than writing, but not for everybody. This data that you will find on IELTS Essentials is broken down into first languages and also nationalities. So you'll see that some nationalities are very good at speaking, other nationalities are maybe not so good at speaking, some are good at writing or reading. You might like to have a look for your own nationality and see. But generally speaking, a lot of people can master reading and listening, their receptive skills. In other words, you are receiving information rather than giving it a little bit more quickly than the productive skills, that is producing things. And that's the same for your language, because I'm sure as a little baby boy or girl, you were able to understand your first language before you were able to actually say a word.
That's right.
Okay.
There's a next question for Anger Sarafat Suman. How can I improve in writing and listening modules?
Well, with the writing, as I said, you need to look at the assessment criteria, and there are 4 assessment criteria for task 1 and 4 assessment criteria for task 2. Have a look at where you are strong, have a look at where you are weak. This might be difficult to do by yourself, but I would recommend that you get a teacher. It doesn't have to be a formal teacher at a school. It could be just someone who is an expert in English, not even a native speaker, but someone who knows more than you. Show them your writing. Ask them for some advice. Where am I going wrong? What could be improved? And work on it systematically. Do it every day, at the same time every day. Routine is very important in learning anything, especially a language. So that's writing. And Alba, what was the other one? Was that speaking?
Uh, yep.
Or
It was
listening?
listening and writing.
And to improve your listening, I would listen to a lot of different accents and listen to a lot of different types of English, because in the listening test, you'll be hearing some informal English, someone just talking by themselves about an informal thing, a couple of people talking about a social engagement. Then you'll be hearing something a little bit more academic, people talking about something to do with a lecture or a tutorial paper at university. And then you'll be listening to someone giving a lecture. So all of these are in different accents, all of these are different types of listening. So if you do that, then you will be able to improve your listening in IELTS. Someone just stole my glass of water just then. I don't know really. Oh, here it is.
Lucky you. There's a question, I'm not sure, but it's Sayam Ishak. Please tell me about the cue card. Is it a question card?
Yeah, the question card.
And how can I practice with them?
Okay, so in the speaking test, in the second part of the speaking test, you will be given a card, a booklet, that has a task on it. And on that task, as I said before, there is a very simple task. And you will be asked to say a few things about someone you know, or about something that you know about, or about a place that you know about, or about an event. Could be about Diwali. They won't say Diwali, but they'll say an event that is important in your country, for example. Now, this is a simple task because you choose exactly who you're going to talk about or what you're going to talk about. And in order to improve your skill in this part of the test, I suggest you practice making notes, because you are given 1 minute to make notes. Now, making notes is a skill, and it's a skill that you can practice. If, for example, I said now, make some notes about a festival in your country, you have 1 minute. Some of you would think, I can't think of anything to say. Some of you might start writing an essay about it. Other people will say, okay, I'm going to say this and this and this and this and this, and after 1 minute, they will have 10 points on their piece of paper. Now, that person will do very well in part 2 because they have 10 things to talk about, and they will very happily talk for 2 minutes. So they have practiced making good notes, so you should do that too.
Okay, there is another question, same from Shalini.
Yeah.
She has 1 month to sit for IELTS, and how much efforts will she need to do practice for each module to get 7 band?
Well, it's a difficult question for me to answer because I don't know. Maybe you are already at a band 7 and you won't have to do anything. You can just go and have a cup of coffee with your friends. Or maybe you are a band 6 and you might have to do a lot of things. Maybe you're a band 7 in some skills. Maybe you're a band 5 in other skills. Who knows? You need to identify those parts of your language that you need to improve. Once you have identified that, and I would recommend you get a teacher or someone who can help you do that, once you have worked out where you should improve, then work out a plan for improvement. I'm going to learn 5 new words every day. Not just words, 5 new phrases every day. I'm going to read 2 pages of a magazine every day. I'm going to take the opportunity to speak for half an hour every day. Whatever you feel you need to improve, you need to then have a plan for improving. And if you do that, then I'm sure that you'll get what you want.
That's right. Yeah, I'm not sure, but Gurpreet says that how is the writing section marked, and what should we concentrate on while doing practice on writing?
Okay.
And the key points.
All right. So it's a good question. The writing is marked by two different examiners. One examiner will mark your task 1 and a different examiner will mark your task 2. Each of those examiners is looking at 4 assessment criteria for each of those tasks. So the first examiner will look at task achievement. Do you answer the question? They'll look at coherence and cohesion. Is it logically organized? They will look at lexical resource. Do you use English words naturally? And they'll look at grammatical range and accuracy. Do you use a range of grammar and is it accurate? The second examiner will do the same for your task 2. Those 2 scores will come together and you'll get an overall score. But remember, task 2 is worth twice the points that task 1 is worth. So if you do a very poor task 2, your overall score will be low. If you do a very good task 2, your overall score will be a little bit higher. So that's how it's marked, and you can look at those assessment criteria if you go to the IELTS.com.au website or the IELTS Essentials website, whichever website you want to go to, and you can see the assessment criteria, and then you can work out where am I strong, where am I weak.
That's right. So is there any word limit when you're doing task?
That's a good question, Alba. There is no word limit, but there is a number of words that you must write. There's a bottom limit. So if you write fewer than 150 words in task 1, you will be penalised. If you write fewer than 250 words in task 2, you'll be penalised. You can write many more words, that's okay. The examiner will read them all, but don't write too many. I would suggest about 160 for task 1, about 260 for task 2, and then you'll have time to correct your work. You'll be able to put more quality rather than quantity into your essay.
Yeah. And if one of the Harpreet saying, as he has an American accent,
yeah.
So he's saying if there is an American slang when he's having a speaking test, does that give a bad impact?
No.
I don't think so.
IELTS is the international English language testing system. So all of the regular accents in English, American, British, Australian, New Zealand, Canadian, are very acceptable when you speak. So there's no problem with an American accent. Your question about American slang could be a problem only because your examiner might not recognize the slang. So be careful with slang. Slang in itself is okay, as long as it's not too vulgar or too, what's the word, Albert, I'm looking for? Those words that start with, SH and F and things like that.
Yeah.
Don't use those words because that's not appropriate in a test situation. But other slang words like, what's a good example of slang? Come on, anyone? Want to give me an example of good slang?
I don't use it, I don't know.
For example, my children use words like it's awesome or it's radical or it's sick, meaning it's good.
Yeah.
Now, these are slang words. These are used in a particular way. You can use that, and the examiner will give you credit for that because you are using colloquial language in an appropriate way, but don't overdo it.
And what about OMG?
Yeah, OMG. Well, that's not one that's, oh my God, is good, because that shows that you can use colloquial language. But do people say OMG?
Oh yeah, my daughter says
really?
that. OMG
really?
all the
Okay.
time.
Okay. I'm too old to do.
Come on, dog. Okay, and what is the most difficult part of the test?
It's a good question because what is difficult for one person may not be difficult for another person. In the speaking, most people think that the last part of the test is the most difficult. That is, when you have to discuss a rather serious, abstract topic, something about education, or something about development, or something about urban planning, or something like that. That's probably difficult because there are some particular words, some vocabulary that you need to be able to use, which is maybe less common than what you would find in the first two parts of the test. Plus, you're asked to justify yourself at length, and you have to speak a little bit more about a particular subject. So for many people, probably most people, that would be the hardest part, I
think. There's another question from Biklav.
Yeah.
How important is it to have a pause and use of chunk in speaking?
Well, that is very important. I talked about chunking earlier on, that there are natural groups of words in English, probably any language, that you can't really break up. You can't pause in the middle of one of those chunks. But between those chunks of speech, then it's perfectly natural and, in fact, important that you do pause. Other sorts of pauses, of course, are okay, because we all pause when we are thinking of something to say. So if I say, well, now that was a perfectly good pause, yes, because it meant that I was thinking about what I was going to say. Of course, if you do that every time you speak, that's a problem, because then the person who is listening to you will not be able to connect your ideas. You will cease to be fluent. But pausing to compose a new sentence and pausing at the end of a chunk of words, that's perfectly good. Laugh out loud. Someone has just mentioned an idiom there, some slang. But yeah, so if you say LOL, then I suppose that shows that you have some understanding of colloquial English. Although, do people say that? They write it.
They write it. They don't say it.
I don't think they actually say it.
Yeah. And do you think, as you said, with the pause, is it good to read when you're reading? So you will be. Do you think it will be helpful
to improve your speaking?
Yeah.
Reading.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some people only understand a language if they can read it very well. That may not be everybody, but in order to understand the structures, in order to improve your vocabulary, then reading is a very valuable part of language learning. But it's not the only part, so you need to be able to do much more than just read a language. I would always suggest that you practice all of your skills together. If you read something, then you produce it in writing and in speaking, and if you hear something, you do the same.
Yep. And the last question is from Amir.
Is this the last question, Alba?
Yes.
Okay. Let's hope it's a good one.
Yeah, I think so, it is. And this person need at least 6.5 band, including 6 in each.
Yeah.
So, but struggling a lot in reading section.
Yes.
So, and I faced a few mock tests the person has done, where I made band 6.
Yep.
Or more, but in reading still
right.
No luck.
This person may benefit from going to the IELTS.com.au website and doing one of our reading assist sessions. This is where you pay a small amount of money, and we will send you a reading test, and then you send us your mark sheet, your answers. We'll give you feedback on whether you answered the questions correctly or not, what sort of mistakes you made, whether there are any problems with your handwriting, whether there are any problems with your spelling. Because sometimes a person has good English, but they have bad handwriting, and this affects their score in reading and listening and also writing. Sometimes they have bad spelling, which also affects their listening, reading and writing score. So do the reading assist session through IELTS.com.au and we can give you some advice about it.
That's good to know.
Yep.
I said it's the last one,
Okay.
but as it's end of the year,
All right.
we'll do 2 more.
Okay, happy Christmas to everyone.
Is the speaking test is normally done before the writing test?
That's a good question, Linda. It's done before the written test at this centre where I'm speaking at the moment in Melbourne. But in most centres throughout the world, it's done after the written test. So it can be done 1 week before the written test. It can be done up to a week after the written test. It doesn't matter. It's still the same test. So it really depends which test centre you do the test at.
Okay, and the last one.
Yep.
This Hesar has a difficulty in reading because of the text that are too extensive or long, and it's hard to find out what's the real answer.
Yeah.
So because of the
text is too long.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Caesar. We'll just make them shorter in the future. No, just joking. We won't make them shorter in the future. That's one of the things about the reading in IELTS is that it does require you to read some longer texts. But in the general training, the texts are generally shorter than in the academic. So if you have a choice between general training and academic, you might find that the general training is more suitable for you because it has shorter texts. If you must do the academic, then I would suggest that you practice reading longer texts. And the text is only about 700 or 800 words long. It's not very long. It's about 1 page of a magazine. So practice doing that.
Okay, one more.
Okay.
It's from Wakara Ahmed.
Yeah.
Like, what if you get off topic, like a topic which you're not aware of?
Yes.
And you don't have clear idea about it. So even if you know a little things about it, what can be done in that case off topic?
Yeah. So if we get a topic in the writing, if we get a topic in the speaking, even in the reading or listening that we don't know very much about, you can be confident that you don't have to know a lot about it because IELTS will never give you a topic where you need to have specialist knowledge. They will never ask you a question about that's right, about the history of Australia or something like that. All the information you need is just general knowledge, the sort of knowledge that most people have about different things. So relax when you're given a topic. In the speaking, for example, if they're asking you, okay, tell me about books that you read, and you never read books, you can easily answer that question. You can say, I never read books, but I read magazines. Or I don't read books, I read comics. I like graphic novels and then you can explain why you don't read. You can speak for 10 minutes about why you don't read, or perhaps a time when you did read when you were younger, or about friends that you know who do read, how popular reading is in your country, etc. You don't have to know a lot about a topic to be able to talk about the topic.
The best part is to ask question why all the time.
That's right. Ask yourself, why do I think that? That's a very good.
That's very clever. Okay.
All right. All right, Alba. Well, thank you very much for helping me in 2016.
I'll help you again in 2017.
That's good.
See these lovely people again.
That's great. And you have a lovely holiday and a happy new year.
You too. And same to you guys. Have a lovely holiday and happy new year.
Okay. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye.